Hey guys, my name is Emmett and I'm currently studying electrical engineering at Northwestern University. And today I want to talk about my experience with college applications. When I was first applying to college, I believed that my stats and extracurriculars weighed more than the actual application itself. I just couldn't wrap my head around why the past 18, 17 years of my life could be equally as important as an application that I'm only working on for a few months. However, your application is extremely important, if not more important, than all the things that you have accomplished in the past. And I'll explain why. The reason why your application matters so much is because this is how you are going to tell your story. This is how you're going to frame the past 17, 10, 5 years of your life into one application for an admission officer to read and go through and to determine in just a few minutes whether you are a qualified candidate for their university or not. So in this video, I want to go over the most important things that I've realized through my college application journey to get me and my brother into Northwestern University. So the number one most important thing is to understand that you are telling a story, that you need to have a narrative. This is not just a, here is some interesting things about me, this is my life, and showing it. You are actually telling a story through your application, which means all these little pieces of your life need to make sense within each other. They need to point towards one narrative. It can't just be, I did this class and I did this activity and played this sport and had leadership over here in this club, volunteered over here, and it's just a whole bunch of random get to know me facts about you. That is not what they care about. The admissions officer, unfortunately, doesn't really care about getting to know you at all. Actually, what they want is to understand, why do you deserve to come here, and more specifically, why should we accept you for the major that you are applying for? This is why you need to get as niche as possible. You can't just say that you want to go to X school because they have a very good engineering program. That just is not going to cut it, because you are competing against other students who are also applying for engineering. You need to get very niche and specific and find ways to make your application stand out, aka how do you make it memorable? If they're reading a whole bunch of applications from other engineering students, how is your application going to stand out? Now, a lot of the times your application at very good schools is not going to stand out because you're much smarter or better than everyone else. That's just very rare. So if you're not much smarter and better than everyone else, you need to, first of all, drop your ego and accept that, and then try to get creative with it. Try to understand, what is a different way for my application to be different from everyone else's? Not necessarily better, but different from everyone else's. I'll give a very good example for myself. When I was considering my application, first of all, I had to make everything relate to each other. So I had a lot of musical background in high school. In high school, I didn't really think about my college application until it was time to apply to college. I wasn't doing things for college or getting into college. I was just doing things for the fun of it. So I love playing the drums. I have some drum videos on this channel from high school. And so that's what I love to do. All my experience, all my time was spent playing the drums. I played baseball for a couple years. But these are completely unrelated to engineering. But I still wanted to have these on my activities list, because otherwise I would just have nothing on my activities list. So what did I do? I had to pick a subfield of electrical engineering that could tie these two together. So first of all, I chose signal processing in electrical engineering because these are waves, so I could somehow relate music and sound to engineering. And then the second thing that I was focused on was, what schools are actually going to appreciate someone with a more creative, artsy background, right? So instead of just applying to schools because it's Harvard or it's an Ivy League school or because UCLA has good food, let's actually apply to schools and choose your list based on a few key things. One being a school that actually has a solid, for me, engineering program. A school that is going to fit your needs for what you want to study. Not necessarily just choosing a school because it's considered a good school, but more importantly, a good school for your major. And then the second factor is choosing schools that will actually accept your student profile. And here's what I mean. MIT, Caltech, these are schools that want very hardcore, just math, studious kind of students, right? Like people who partook in math competition, science Olympiad, won awards. And unfortunately, I did not do these things. Build projects. I also didn't really have that many projects built. So I wanted to emphasize my ability to excel in my STEM classes and some of the projects that I built and some of the clubs that I was in, but also being able to target the creative side of my mind. So at Northwestern, we have in our engineering program something called the whole brain curriculum, which means they love people who not only use the right side of the brain, so their analytical side, but also their creative side. So they want to emphasize the full use of the brain. And this is why Northwestern was one of my top choices, because not only are they a good school, not only do they have a top engineering program, but they also appreciate students with my kind of profile. Same thing with Columbia. They also target more artsy students, and I got waitlisted at that school as well. This is how I was able to choose what schools to focus my time on, right? Because applications take a long time. You don't want to spend a ton of time applying to a school where they don't really accept students like you. And then another way to think about this is to understand the school that you're applying to. What kind of students do they usually accept? And try to fit your profile towards that kind of student profile. Once you're able to figure out your narrative that you want, the major that you want, and the schools that you're going to apply to, you have to go through your activities list and make sure everything points towards your major. Even if something is seemingly completely unrelated to your major, you have to somehow tie it into it. So I'll give an example. My brother, he was doing volunteering for a church, and he was just in the sound room, and I had to make this, help him make it related to engineering. So he was working with technology and the soundboards and stuff, so we weren't like exaggerating or lying, but we had it framed in a more engineering way or perspective rather than a volunteering perspective, since his major is towards the technical aspect, the technical side, rather than helping people. Obviously, every school loves to see when people help people, show initiative, leadership abilities, and those are the subcategories you should target if your activities have absolutely nothing to do with your major. But if you can somehow find a way to frame your activities to relate to your major, that is the number one priority, because like I said, you want everything to point towards a singular narrative. And then I want to talk about essays, right? Essays are extremely important. So when it comes to your essays, we still want to keep everything I just said in mind, and we don't necessarily want to just write about ourselves, and we don't want to be generic, right? Like I was saying at the beginning, we want to get niche, we want to get very specific. So I'll give an example of a very common essay prompt where, they'll ask, why do you want to come to our school? And let's give an example. Columbia, when I was applying to Columbia, they have the core, which is pretty popular. They're also based in New York City. So these are generic reasons that don't really relate to your major that many people are going to mention in their application. And because everyone mentions it in their application, you do not make yourself stand out at all by mentioning these in your application. In fact, it's almost just a waste of words. They kind of just assume that you know what the core is if you're applying to Columbia. So because of these things, I didn't mention at all that it was in New York City. I didn't mention at all about the core. I decided to get much deeper and much more specific when it came to my major and what I was actually applying for, and the niche that I wanted to study and go into with my career for, right? I didn't just say electrical engineering, but I went a step deeper when I said signal processing. So how did I get very specific in my essays? when I would write and answer this kind of prompts. I would name drop professors at that school, which means I did lots of research into their website. Now there's tools and resources like ChatGPT that can help you with this, and find these niche little parts of their website for you. But for me, I was actually going through the website myself and trying to find research labs that were related to signal processing, the professor that would run these research labs, the courses that these professors would teach, and the courses that were unique to this school that other schools didn't necessarily have. And I would name drop these courses and research labs and professors to not only show that I really care about going to the school, which is very important because they prioritize having low acceptance rates. They want to know that you're actually going to come if they accept you. And this is also very important because it shows interest that you actually care about going to the school, which is very important. And so by doing this kind of research and finding these very niche and specific details, it really shows that you care and you're much more inclined to get accepted and to stand out. You're very different from other applications because you're name dropping these certain maybe clubs, labs, professors, courses that are unique to that school that nobody else is really mentioning. And so that is a way to stand out, not necessarily because your application is better than everyone else's, but because it's different. There's just not a whole bunch of people mentioning the exact same things that you are mentioning in your essays. For me, when I was writing my essays and when I was reading through my brother's essays, I made a point to just make the personal essay about myself, about my personal story, how I got into engineering, why I want to do engineering. But besides that, my other essays were a lot more academic, a lot more career and education focused. What I want to do with my major and what do I want to study specifically. And the reason why I do this is because at the end of the day, you are applying to college. So I want you guys to do lots of research. That is very important. You should be doing as much research as you are working on your application. If you do no research and you're just writing essays and you copy and paste essays between schools, they're going to be able to tell because that means your essays are very generic and therefore you're not really standing out. And if you're not standing out through just your accomplishments, and especially at very competitive schools, that is very, very difficult to do, then you're not really setting yourself up for success. So anyways, that is what I have to say about applying to college and getting into top schools. I want you to also consider your stats. So you should be able to gauge what schools are achievable for your stats. For example, me and my brother had very similar stats. I roughly around like 4.4, 4.5 GPAs, 1510 for me, 1540 on the SAT for him. And we took around double digit, around like 10 AP courses as well, and we usually got 5s or 4s in them. For our stats, they weren't exceptional, so we didn't apply to schools like Harvard and MIT and Stanford and Princeton because it's just not really worth your time. You're not really gauged in there. We don't have any special legacy or anything helping us getting us in. So you need to find ways to make yourself different, right? A lot of schools prioritize diversity. They want a diverse student body. How are you going to make yourself different and not you being a generic kind of student, making yourself very niche and specific. And by having a whole bunch of niche and specific students, they create a very diverse student body. That is pretty much all I have for this video. I know it was kind of short, but I think I went over everything, where how to choose your colleges, your narrative is very important, how to make your extracurriculars point towards this narrative and your major that you're applying for, how to answer very common essay prompts, and what to really focus on when you're applying to school, and to understand that the application itself is very, very important. If you guys have any other questions or would like me to make more specific videos on these topics within the application, leave a comment down below. My name is Emmett Funston, and thank you for watching.